let's do it.
Yeah, thank you. I hear some people who speaking only English. Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will help.
Everyone else is native.
Okay. Yeah, but we have two persons, so we can continue in English. Welcome to our Community University Science Park. My name is Lenka Bednarova and I'm from Inkubator of the Science Park, and this is one of the activities we are organizing for students and teachers and some researchers in our university mainly, and we are focusing to supporting young startups, and we want to build the business potential of our students and employees. So we organize an event like this, and also we have some programs. So if you will be interested, you can look at our webpage, and we will find more information. So today's guest is Szalay, who is speaking today about this company Abiagenomics, and
first one to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, perfect.
It's good.
Yeah, perfect. So I think it's time to give you the look.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming here. And I want to make it super informal. I bet you don't like going in there studying and stuff like that. You want to just do things. So that's why I wanted to make it a little bit more interactive, and for you to see. You see the 309 notes. So those are actually real notes, which I had to go through to get the 1S. And the 1S might be small, but it's going to start your career. And from garage research to farm infrastructure, that's kind of that's what I wanted to kind of tell you about. Is how do you bring your startup or your idea or whatever skill that you have to just be meaningless the first day and have it something important in day 100, for example, as the infrastructure. And before we do that, I want to kind of introduce you to what ABIA is. So before we get into the story of how it began, ABIA is a physical and digital infrastructure to run science end-to-end. So going from idea to in silico discovery, physics, chemistry, biology, into plugging into your lab, manufacturing the compound that you discover, until distributing your last drug. It might be an end of research for autoimmune diseases or cancer. The whole infrastructure in one place is what we call ABIA. One of our main flagship products is Spectre, and we're just entering the stage with pharmaceutical companies to do their phase 1 clinical trials, phase 2 clinical trials. Got many projects running simultaneously. But before we go in, I want to see my audience here who is from which kind of verticals. So my first question is, who is in life sciences? Whether you're studying, you're working in life sciences, just raise your hands. Okay, pretty cool. And who's from business, finance, economics, law? Okay, less. And who is working or thinking about working in a startup or trying to build something of their own? Interesting, okay. Well, I get to break the news. Both of you have the same odds. Whether you're in life sciences or if you're in business, you probably have the same odds of making it as a startup founder in deep tech or in biotech. And some people might say that, I go to school to study molecular biology, or you go to school to study economics, but probably it's going to be 1% of the things that you're going to need to run a startup. And this is probably how you're going to look like. And as a founder, obviously, if you are aiming to build something meaningful like a unicorn, per se, Slovakia doesn't have any unicorns, by the way. It's a unicorn is a company valued at over $1 billion. And if you ever have the motivation to do something like that, you probably have to be perfect in every possible vertical that is out there. That's why it's not for everyone in the first place. But what I want to cover today is kind of the main principles of how do we find pain in the product that we're developing? How do we defend that product? Meaning, how can we build a moat around our product so other customers cannot join, other competitors cannot join our space? And how do we even think about fundraising, distributing the product, going into enterprise deals, and everything that has to do with building a successful company. And some of the most 6 principles that I want to cover is knowing what to build, how to handle failure, how to build defensibility, how fundraising works. It's probably the biggest question out there for anyone trying to build something of their own. How do you nail the first hires, and how do you catch the big fish? In this case, the big fish might be an enterprise. If you're working in life sciences and trying to start a startup in biotech or robotics, whatever it is, it might be Pfizer, it might be AstraZeneca, or other companies that you might consider big fishes, and you want to have deals with them. You want to have your as the customers. So the first thing, which is the question, how to build something that people need? Well, it's a good one, and we have to start with thinking about what do we like to do. What is it something that we have at least a little bit of understanding in? Do we have passion about this problem that we want to solve? And pain, in this case, starts very simply. It is an inefficiency that changes into urgency. And we asked those very simple questions. We started Abia in a garage, literally in my co-founder's garage, and there was nothing close to a company. There was no product. There was nothing. It was me obsessed with my personal problem, which I was born with 1 kidney, and at 12 I was diagnosed with arthritis. Not a good start. I was super obsessed with what do we do about that? How do we find drugs? How do we find solutions that might treat my disease? Well, we started researching. We started doing what every other person would do. We go to books. We go to literature. We go to bioinformatics. We go to speakers. We go to academics. And that is when we started learning about the market and start to understand what are the missing pieces that it needs to be simple, to be actually go there and solve autoimmune diseases as a flu, right? But obviously, it's not that simple. So that's why you have to ask those very important questions in the beginning, which is, why should we care about that problem? Why should other people care about that problem? Bring out the big numbers. First of all, for example, I want to develop a drug. It costs $5 billion to make. It's going to take over 10 years in clinical trials. And probably 90% of the time is going to fail in phase 3 clinical trials. Well, how do we solve those problems? And what if we build, that's the second question, what if we build a software? What if we build a drug? What if we build a small molecule? It's going to help some way. It might work for some people. It might work for startups. But is it going to scale as a business? Is it going to be something that is going to bring $10 billion of revenue a year? Well, we got to find out. This is probably how those first months of building Avia in my living room with my co-founder looked like, trying to connect everything that is out there and see where the inefficiencies are, where we can bring urgency. And those inefficiencies can be quantified into multiple different facets. I'll cover those later. But some of the most important things that we see while building Avia is biology, chemistry, and physics were so disconnected and fragmented that the data is basically missing out of the picture. Well, that's where AI comes, or that's when longevity comes, or a system comes. There's so many products in the market that are nice to have. It's a feature, it's a vitamin. This is going to be the next slide, which is, no, the other one. Sorry, one more. Yeah, this one. So this is the exact problem that we came into. We started building a vitamin instead of a painkiller. And it's a very important lesson when you even start thinking about building a company or building a product. Is it something that is nice to have, or is it something that you must have? Well, we built the vitamin first, and we found out after 6 months or 7 months of pointless development, which basically scrapped out. We didn't use a single line of code ever. Only then, after feedback, we found out that it's probably not the thing that we should be building because it's not scaling. Customers that don't like it, they're not using it. And it was really just an expensive hobby for us. It was a slide before. It was really just an expensive hobby because we waste money on code, we waste money on research, on people. And our passion is not build a product. It was really that the market didn't give a shit. Let's go. And what does the market pay for then? How do we identify those pains and build solutions around them? We start by quantifying what is the pain. What can be the pain, right? It can be inefficient systems. The pain can be disconnected systems. The pain can be that some tasks are too repetitive. And then, if we see those problems in whatever areas are we looking and building in, we identified frequency. Is this problem occurring every day, every month, or once a year? If I'm going to build a solution that's going to be 2 times faster, or is it going to replace a task that I'm doing every day to bring new research, to bring new ideas in? And if we have that, we quantify it by how much it really costs to the customer. Is it money that he's losing, or is it the time, or is it the potential customers that he's losing if he doesn't solve his problem? And that's where we have to bring urgency. Our goal as a startup, or anyone as a startup, is show the customer what he doesn't have and could have when he uses your solution. Well, in this case, it was the infrastructure that's going to connect every vertical, every little point of science in one place. That's what ABF is. And what they have right now is 20 different vendors, 20 different contracts, 20 different teams of people that they have to care about. This is a very good one. Before you ever reach a level that now my company or now my product is, I can understand the pain, I can understand what am I trying to build, where can I sell it? It's going to be a big question. Are you going to sell to startups or are you going to sell to enterprise? And both of them float on the same waters. It's just that they have different ships. Startups, they look for simplicity. They look for fast solutions. They like to iterate. They like to experiment with new things. They want quick traction. They want a very high return on their investment. But enterprises, completely different thing. They want control. They want risk. They want to standardize every part of that product. They want high security and big support. And that is the decision that you have to make before trying to sell. Because when you're selling to startups, they don't care about what you're going to sell them. They're going to buy it anyways. But when you're selling to enterprise, you'll probably fail on the step 1, which is complexity, compliance, and science. And we're kind of reaching the space where cost of generation of software is basically zero. You probably all know about this. Anthropic, ChatGPT is pretty much allowing us to build solutions within a day, which can bring value. But what is something that is very underrated is the flywheel of how do we reach new customers? And how do we build our product market fit around them, which is BMF? The most important thing is you have to launch as quick as you can. I believe you can, within a day, build a solution that's going to solve a real problem, bring a real value to the customer, and you can ship it in the same day. When you do that, that was the first problem that we kind of seen, which is we spent 3 months building something that customers didn't want. And it's a very expensive lesson. We spent thousands of dollars building solutions that we thought were the best. But you were not the experts. The customer is. He understands his pain better than anyone else. So the second best thing you have to do is get feedback. Get feedback early so you can remove the phase where you iterate on all those mistakes you've made. The first version of Apple 1, you probably don't have no idea what that was. But that probably was the worst computer ever built. You might laugh, but it's real. It was probably the worst operating computer, probably the worst design. Functions were mid. But if you look at Apple right now, what do you see? You see perfection, you see speed, you see the vision, right? But that's not what you're going to reach into step 1, which is launching quickly. And launching quickly is going to save you so much time and money over trying to spend thousands of dollars on building something that people don't want. And when you iterate on those features and iterate on the problems that you haven't solved in the first place, you start building retention. And that is the first signal in the product market fit when customer comes to you instead of you coming to the customer. So you built something over and over, you went through the loop, launch, feedback, iterate, launch, feedback, iterate, and you went through the loop enough that the customer starts to come to you. And he now sees that, okay, I want that solution. I would like to buy from you. I would like to use it without me trying to sell him. That is the first signal of retention. You're becoming a magnet. And in that point, many startups which I've seen fail because they think it's, okay, let me switch into the sales. Let me switch to selling. Let me switch to converting the customer right away. But that is a mistake, which we found out obviously again. If a customer comes to you, you probably have a solution that he likes or he needs. But if you sell to the customer, you've learned nothing. You've probably gained some money, but you haven't learned anything about him. So what do? The same thing you would do if a customer doesn't come to you. You ask questions, you try to understand why did he come? What is it that interests him in the first place that he come to you for that solution? You learn so much about him that you know where you excelled in the first place, so I can put more money in to the feature, into the process, into whatever it is that made that product sell itself. And then you reach momentum. And more people come because of one thing that we've identified that someone else doesn't do, but we somehow do. That's where you build momentum. The second most important part is, even if you built the product, well, what are the chances that someone else will come next day and they will just build the same thing and they're going to basically copy you right away? And right now it's pretty obvious. And it's pretty easy to copy someone else. So how do you make it hard to replace? Well, we asked ourselves the same thing. And we were replaced probably within an hour. The first version and the second version of the infrastructure that we've been building was really replaced by our competitor within an hour. The old modes. Is anyone familiar with the mode means? So modes are very simply is a place on which you either build, collect data, build a product, reach new customers, which other competitors cannot. Because you've built a moat around your castle. You have a river surrounding your castle, which others cannot cross because they don't have boats. But you do, you have bridges. And when you build a wide enough river across your castle, it's harder for competitors to cross it. And the old modes really were, let's build a cool code, let's build a nice UI, let's build features that competitors don't have, but it's become so cheap to build code, to build new features, to make a nice UI that that's not a mode anymore. You cannot defend features. Well, that's when new modes come. A lot of the deep tech startups and biotech startups, which I've seen over the past years, they always started by collecting data. They always started collecting data from universities, from their own research, where they were students working on some interesting projects. And those are the data that competitors don't have. They don't have the data because they don't have the capabilities and network that other people do, which are those customers, those founders. So data is probably the most important node here. Distribution. Well, how do you create new distribution channels that your competitors don't have or cannot have in the next or short-term future? Well, how do you? Regulation, workflows, those work pretty much the same in the same space. It is so hard to get clinical trials done, to get patents in deep tech, or to build regulatory pathways in deep tech that others cannot replicate within a weekend. And the same things come with trust in hardware. It's becoming a more trend to build hardware which is not easily replaceable than software, which I can really do in a weekend. And I call this atom over bits. And this is exactly the analogy of AI B2B SaaS, business-to-business software as a service companies. It can be really copied in 2 hours. There's not really any mode here. Anyone can ship it right now, even people that don't understand code. and people that are non-technical, but they understand the problem, they can pretty much come up with a solution very fast. But when you come to physical infrastructure, when you come to labs, or robots, or chips, or space, those are industries that are disrupted right now. And you guys, all of you, have pretty much the same odds of making it happen if you just stick to one thing, find that one pain problem that no one else solved yet. And it's not that hard. And I'll tell you why. Finding that problem doesn't come with thinking about it too much, trying to be passionate about something, but it really comes from observation on what is happening in the market and where the problems are getting created by these problems. Because we create a new solution, new platform, new software, which is going to create more problems that they haven't solved in the first place. So how do we take those pain points and turn them into companies? This is probably the biggest mistake I did in the beginning of starting Avia, which was I can build it all myself. I can do it without a team. I can basically cover every point, every law, every operation, every technical part, every business part myself. And it was really something that you're not going to learn unless you're going to fail. So I'm going to give you kind of understanding what that means and how to use leverage. This was me on the left. So we're trying to push the car without anyone sitting in the steering wheel. So the car was going left, sometimes right, but I was the one pushing it. So I couldn't really steer the direction. But when you start thinking about the delegation of problems in the company which you're starting to build, that's where you build leverage. That's where you have a team of interesting people which you gather either through your network or university, whatever place you are, you can get to those people simpler than you think. And I've made a big mistake by trying to hire by degrees and trying to hire people by track record. It's obviously the first most obvious thing that's going to come. I want to hire people. Well, they need to have 10 years of experience. They need to have degrees of whatever sort. They have to be working in the biggest companies. They need to understand the topic the best. But you would be mistaken. It would actually, it's quite the opposite. And it's spotting the talent before it evolves and before it leaves to be built for NVIDIA, or before it leaves to go work in IBM or other large companies. This is what you want to build here, the Avengers. As previously I was saying that when you find the problem, now you understand the pain of the customer, you see the frequency on which they iterate, that's the research part. You ship the product very fast to show them that you have at least a capability to bring a product to build a solution to their existing problems. You build your core team around it. You scale. It sounds super simple. All of these were, by the way, points which we drastically failed in. We didn't build the first prototype. We built a very shitty piece of software, which was 5 different tools for analyses of mutations and converting them into proteins. It was probably the worst thing that ever came out of my laptop. And core team, obviously, I hired super bad people, were not doing the thing, they were lazy. The worst people I've ever seen, which is a pretty good point here, are those that don't align with your vision. And if your vision is so huge, average people don't get that vision. And they don't fit into the cohesive, larger vision that you as a founder is trying to build, and only the founder understands that vision, but they don't, because you're not a good salesman. You didn't sell that vision to those early employees. You didn't sell that vision to the customers. You didn't sell the vision to your investors. And that is your problem, basically, which I had to learn again. Got a lot of bad feedback from investors, got a lot of bad feedback from customers. I got super shitty code from my employees until you reach a state where you have your inventors. And part of that, building a product, is a lot of people ask me, like, or come to me and say, we're building something super important. investors should care, customers should care. It's a super important problem, but the world doesn't care. No one cares about your startup. No one cares about your idea until you show them and make them come to you instead of you coming to them. This is probably the question. We're the best team. You're from university. We're from Harvard or whatever. We're building something important. You should care. You should invest the money. You should buy the product. You should come work for us. But everyone's on their smartphones. People don't care. So what do to make them care? Well, there are a couple of ways. First comes from investors. I don't know if anyone here tried to fundraise or have any experience with VCs. Does anyone have? Do you know what a VC means in this principle? Very quickly, there are a lot of people with a bunch of money, which they want to 10x their money. So the first thing they can do is go to a fund, put the money into the fund, and the fund is going to distribute all that money into startups. And they're going to hope that there's going to be one startup that's going to be worth 1 million or billion or whatever, so they can make quick money. That's a very simple explanation. And those investors, when we first started to talk to them, started to pitch them our ideas, we didn't know what to do. You have to have a presentation or deck. You have to have your cap tables. You have to have your company set up. All these different things, you have to have answers to how you're going to distribute to pharma, how you're going to distribute to enterprise. And all these questions we've had zero answers for. And only thing that they look for is how probable is my investment to you is so that the outcome of your company is going to be 1 billion or 10 billion or even more. And if the founder of that company doesn't have the vision in his mind from the day one that my company is going to be worth 10 billion and is going to do a monopoly in that market, you're probably not going to fundraise. It's a sad reality, but you're not going to fundraise by going to an investor and saying, hey, we're going to make 5 million a year. It's not going to cut it. Your founder, your mission is to sell them and tell them, one day, when we do ABCD, we're going to make 100 billion a year. And this is how are we going to do it. Obviously, different VCs, different people, different pitches, different ideas, different expectations. When it comes to pitch to Y Combinator, which is probably one of the biggest, most known VCs in the world, they're running their accelerator. They're looking for something completely different than your European VC. I've pitched to 150 European VCs, probably over 50 of American VCs, and the mindset, if anyone starts to consider to try to go to investors for money, is that the American VCs, they look for $1 trillion company, not a 10 billion, not 100 billion, $1 trillion. European VCs are looking for 2x, 3x, 4x. That's pretty much the difference here. And they're not going to value effort that you put into building this startup. They're not going to care unless you show them traction, unless you show them something else. And people think that I have to go to investors to get capital so I can build momentum. But it's exactly the opposite way. You start with building momentum, which I've shown you in the first place, and only after that, you can come to investors, which can find you relevant, which is going to find you more in that problem, invested in that problem, and they're going to see that you are capable. Because their role is, how do we de-risk this investment and try to put our money to places which have very likely odds of succeeding. And if you show them that, they're going to give you good deals. Our first term sheet, which we got, was very little. Super bad valuation, 100 pages of legal documents, which are pain. So that was not the thing that we wanted to do. We probably spent $20,000 in lawyers just to look over those 100 pages, just to see how bad the deal was. And the reason is we had no customers, no traction, no product, 2 people, 0 distribution. When we worked on all of those, came 3 months after that, we got a pretty big deal. I'm not going to say the number, but much bigger than that. This kind of the value of that, where even if you are able to fundraise, if you are able to get that first check, the most important thing, which probably 90% of startups don't look at, is the next round, the next check. Where is that going to come from? I raised the first one, I get $1 million. Am I going to get the next $1 million? Every startup or founder calculates every month of expenses for the next 18 months. They're going to work on their products, and month number 16 or month number 15 comes, and they're like, okay, so we have to start fundraising again because we're running out of money. Then you go to your investors, and you're going to say, okay, so do you have 1 million of revenue? No. You have a product. Do you have customers? Well, a few. We have a product. Do you have distribution channels? Do you have advisors? Well, no, but we have a cool product. And now you're in the value of that. It is actually more likely that you're going to raise your pre-seed round, which is the first round ever. It's more likely to raise that round than the second. Because probably most of the founders end up in that value of depth between an IPO, which is going into stock markets, and getting into the second round. In the first round, everyone looks for vision. These investors, they look for vision, they look for potential, they look for team. But founders tend to forget that in the second round, that they go and overlook metrics, growth, and proof, and advisors. So super important parts of building a startup. So where do you put your time? Well, when we first started building and we got onto the version 2, that was a place where we realized that we've spent 9 months right now without any customer, without half a product, any team. There was just 2 of us, 0 advisors, 0 money from investors. So we probably put every dollar that we had into developing this. But we didn't have users, even pilot users, even users to just come in and give you feedback. We didn't have anything. That changed a lot over the time, and those users will unlock you the valuations of your companies for next rounds that you just dream of. You will be very surprised that when you come to US, for example, and you come with 5 customers using your product, you can ask for $20 or $30 million. They're going to give it to you. If you're a 3-person team, have a product in a difficult industry, have 5 or 10 different customers, they can give you $30 million for that first round. I've seen this. And advisors is another thing. We didn't have anyone really. We just had me, my co-founder, which was an academic. I was not an academic. I did not study. I was rejected by 4 schools, by the way. I didn't go to any school. I started some businesses when I was 16. I did very different industries, even with my friend here. So we did all sorts of weird stuff. But I had the vision that others didn't have. And I had the advisors. I came to the biggest players out there. For example, I have one advisor from Roche, which is a pharmaceutical company, general manager of Roche. He's on our board. So those are the people that not only unlock your network, your distribution, but also how investors perceive you when you're working on very, very difficult problems. And the network is the second one. So the network is the second one, the last one, which is something that I did have, but I did not have if I didn't do these exact things. You would say that it's hard to build networks, it's hard to connect to people. But if you don't put enough time into going into really public events, networking events, investing time on LinkedIn, it will be funny, but you will laugh, it's LinkedIn. But those are the places that got me into people, for example, like Matt, one of my friends, which was in San Mateo in San Francisco. He was he's a friend of mine on our panel a lot of times. And those are the people that give you idea on how things work in this world. He was, by the way, an ex-boyfriend of Sam Altman, so pretty cool people. He was a founding engineer in OpenAI, 2014. So, and these people are really there, looking for new startups, looking for new people. They can talk to you. You don't have to worry. You don't have to be scared. Just shoot them a message like, hey, I'm working on something interesting. I would like to hear your feedback on X. You have 30 minutes on call. These people will get back to you. You would think that they're so far, they're so unreachable, but it's quite the opposite. These are the 399 no's which I had to go through. These are some of the categories which I got those no's from. And when we started fundraising last summer, I obviously didn't have any networks. I didn't know investors from like conversations. So the first thing is, okay, I'm going to send a bunch of emails. I'm going to send a bunch of emails. I'm going to send a bunch of messages. I'm going to call them, which is probably the worst thing you can do. Call investors. Don't call investors. I'm going to drop Twitter messages. I'm going to go to Instagram and comment on posts of investors so they can notice me. Well, out of probably 700 messages, maybe 200 get to me, or maybe 150, maybe. And those are all no's, so they were all zeros. And one of the biggest reasons, one of the biggest objectives, was your vision is too big, but you can't deliver. You have a small team, you have big vision, but you can't do it. So that's why I learned to listen to the no, but not to the why. And that is super important, because when you really believe in the vision, you really believe in the mission that you want to build with your startup, and the investor is going to come with 5 different reasons why no, he's going to basically unmotivate you from what you want to build. So when I just listen to the no, he's like, okay, you're not enough for this vision. Okay, bye. Stop with the discussion. I'm not going to listen to his 5 different arguments why I'm not the one to build it, why this is not the good market. Airbnb was rejected by one of my investors, and they said at the time that the market is too low. It is a very small market. How much is Airbnb worth? They process 1% of all transactions in the world. 1% of all the money goes to Airbnb. And their investors in their very early rounds said that there's no market. So that kind of gives you the perspective to not listen to the why, because if they would have listened to the why, they probably wouldn't do Airbnb. They would say, okay, if the market is slow, we probably shouldn't do it. But they did it anyway, and now they process 1% of global transactions. And the best thing you can do is warm intros. For anyone that is not familiar with that, that was the reason why I got my yes. Warm intros work very simply. You go to networking events again. You meet people in person. You build relationships before you even start considering fundraising. And when you build those relationships and you have those doors half opened, those investors are like your friends. It might sound scary, but you can have friends as an investor. So it's pretty reachable. And I reached out to this one person. He was working on this startup in South America. And I'm like, hey, I need to fundraise. Like pretty quickly, I wasted a lot of money. And now is the time I have to finish the round. He's like, okay, just send me the deck. I have some people in here. So he sent this deck to Adam Draper, which is the son of Tim Draper. They invested in early stages of companies like SpaceX, Tesla, Twitch, I think Discord, like super, super large companies. And the difference between those investors, which I tried to reach out to myself, where when I got a call with an investor, which I didn't know at all, I just dropped him an email. We spent 40 minutes talking or 30 minutes talking, then 2 weeks of silence. And there comes a response like, oh, okay, we would like to have another call. Let's do some due diligence. There are another 3 weeks of silence. And then by 1.5 months in, there's like, okay, so you're not the fit, sorry. Investors from warm introductions work pretty differently. We were supposed to have a 15-minute call with this guy, Adam, which I didn't know at the time. It turned out to be 1 hour, and 4 days after that, he sent me the money. Not the term sheet, not the terms, the money. So that's how they operate. And that's why the warm intros are so important when trying to reach the investors. And really, the line which you all of might see, that there's a line that I cannot pass because they're gonna eat me alive, it's not there. you can just skip the line. And I was that guy trying to wait for the entry for investors to reply. Please, I'm here. I'm building something super important. Please reply to me because I need the money. You can really just skip the line and go from behind and be in the backstage drinking, champagne with the investors. You can say it like that, but it's so reachable. It's so possible that you might think it's not. But I'm going to tell you, I was no one before that. I did not do anything. I was not a scientist. I was not an academic. And it is possible. These are probably the things that you might say that, hey, I'm not qualified. I'm super early in the game. I might be ignored. I might be uncertain. All of those things, that was me. I did not know how to build startups. Who knows here? Who knows how to build startups? You don't. Just figure it out by yourself. So I thought I'm going to build it. I thought I'm going to fail. I thought I'm going to do that. And the best thing you can do is just go in. Just start building. Just fail a bunch of times. See what it's going to teach you. And build it over again and again and again. And you reach a stage where starting a startup is going to be as simple as brushing your teeth in the morning. And that's not going to happen like that. You're not going to learn that, sadly. You're not going to learn that in school at all. School is going to teach you one thing, but startup is going to teach you 100 other things which you have never experienced. And those are sadly things that we're not teaching, but we could be showing them what does it take actually to build a startup or to build a successful startup at all. But right now, in 2026, is probably best time to just go in, start a startup, and figure it by yourself. And just do it. Talk to investors. Talk to anyone that you can. The channels, social medias, and social networks are so easy to get that it's really just your laziness if you don't do it. And it is so reachable. And anyone here which is considering or working on something, I was in the stage where I could not do it myself alone. So if anyone is working on anything, reach out to me and it may help you to find those investors, find those open doors which are not there, which you might not see yet, but are open and waiting for you. Or if you are considering going out to US or to Europe or whatever it is, I'm very open to do it. So if you have any thoughts or any ideas, any startups you want to work on, let me know. We can grab a one-on-one and figure it out together. Thanks.